Less than a week after Let Women Speak campaigner Posey Parker narrowly avoided being trampled to death in New Zealand by a violent mob of heavyset male transgender cultists, furious that their deepest desire to share intimate spaces with young women remained under dubious scrutiny, a deranged and indoctrinated girl who bought the lie being daily churned into young minds that they can defy nature and somehow change sex, shot her way into a religious school in Tennessee and murdered 6 Christians, 3 of them young children, as part of her own satanic transgender crusade. Ethnic cleansing of any other group, of any other race, religion or creed would be rightly and roundly condemned, whilst inevitably being seized upon by the power-hungry for weeks as maximum political capital was drained from this pile of innocent corpses. But these weren't just any persecuted group. These were white Christians, the very lowest of the low in the intersectional hierarchy of grievance and permissible hate. So instead of silence, instead of outrage at the slaughter of innocent children, from the American president came giggles of delight about ice cream as the young bodies became ever colder, alone on their steel trays in the morgue.
My name is Joe Biden. I'm Dr. Joe Biden's husband. And I ate Jenny's ice cream, chocolate chip. I came down because I heard there was chocolate chip ice cream. By the way, I have a whole refrigerator full upstairs.
First up tonight is someone who is no stranger to the attacks from the hardcore left or beatings from the Be Kind crew. And after seeing the scenes unfold in New Zealand and Australia for the crime of having an opinion and sticking up for women's rights, I decided to invite him on to talk more about it. Andy No, author of the New York Times best-selling book Unmasked and senior editor of the Post Millennial. Andy, thank you so much for joining me. What did you make of those scenes in Auckland with Posey Parker?
Well, I think the violence is happening because attempts to silence women's rights campaigners and critics of radical trans ideology, those attempts to silence them have failed. Those who have been in the trenches as activists or have been documenting this as I have for a long time can easily point to mountains of evidence of violence and threats of violence really being, I would say, a pillar of their MO. We know from research on how radicalization happens is that there needs to be a grievance narrative. In this particular case with the radical trans militants, it's not just a narrative, it's a lie. They have a number of claims. One, they claim that they are victims of genocide. That is neither true in this country or in my country, the United States. In fact, all the data we have on people who are gender diverse identifying shows that that population group has surged, actually, very, very rapidly. In addition, we see every institution from government to media to medicine being captured by some form of this trans ideology. And although we don't know what's in the manifesto of the mass killer in Nashville, that killing at the Christian school, the killings, I should say, do come in the middle of a surge in violent rhetoric from trans militants because they are reacting to various states in the US restricting the medical transitioning of minors. And even before that, if you go to any of their direct actions in the US or in the UK, you will often see signs and statements and chants of threats of violence, of sexual violence. And I mean, the reaction from many radical trans activist groups after the shooting, which has been to mourn the deceased mass murderer.
But you're a so you know you've covered these. You're often first on the scene digitally when it comes to you know I've witnessed you really getting in there early on people's Facebook profiles, Twitter profiles, all these these manifestos. So when it's someone from the so-called far right who commits a mass shooting, the manifesto is often revealed. isn't it? Or the contents of it are revealed. Why do you think the manifesto has not been revealed this time?
It's my understanding that the FBI has been holding it up, and at least on the ground, there are a number of LGBTQ activist groups who have also urged for that to not be released. I think that's quite telling. Do
you think it's quite telling because of the contents of what might be in this manifesto? Because she did send a text message to her friend saying there's a lot of it, there's more than enough information in there. Do you think that the contents of that may be a direct attack on Christian people?
Well, I don't want to speculate, but I understand the argument that releasing extremist manifestos may help, promote their message more. I can understand that argument. I am of the perspective that I think it's better for the public to be informed about who commits these atrocities, what may have motivated them, what their social media footprint is. And I'm just going to go over and over again back to that the core claims that the trans ideologues and activists say that they are victims of a genocide. It's not true. In the U.S., we're averaging around 30 deaths of trans people total in a population of 360 million, and of that, very, very few of that are the victims because of a hate crime. I'm talking about like 5. Now, every death is a tragedy, and I'm not minimizing it, but that's not a genocide. And
what's in it for politicians, though, for Joe Biden to tweet today, you're visible to us, we love you, and also to invoke religion, when it's very clearly written in the Bible, whether you're religious or not, that he made them male and female, for Joe Biden to say, God bless you for whoever you are. I mean, he's invoking God in a way which is not representative of what the Christian belief is, and B, he is, when there's 6 dead Christian people on the floor and in a morgue in Tennessee, he is giving a round of applause to trans shooters. I mean, it seems to me, to any sane human being, be it Democrat or Republican, this is a gross violation of his position of office. Well,
a lot of left-of-center people, left-wing people, and liberal media are quite sadistic. We've already had many years of, in the wake of for example, any jihadist attack, the response often would be to frame the perpetrators of the violence as somehow victims of Islamophobia, and that, it's victim blaming. We had years of that through IS attacks and before that. Now that it's a different group of people committing violence, it's the same tactic, and it's sick. But that's what they do. So.
Do you think, in my view, I hold this sort of simple view that everyone can be evil. It doesn't matter what political persuasion you are. But there does seem, from far-right people, from the Timothy McVeighs, I don't know whether he was far-right, but he certainly was, that we're seeing an escalation now, a ramping up of the more this ideology is rejected, the more people are awake to what is happening. We've got this report coming out this week, this Policy Exchange report saying, it's just horrendous, some of this stuff. 72% of schools are teaching people that have gender identity may be from a different biological sex. 25% of people are teaching that some children may be born in the wrong body. This is the complete capture of the entire educational establishment by an ideology. And I think possibly, do you think the more it's coming into vision to people and the curtain is being drawn back, the more we challenge it, the more violent they become, and what can we expect moving forward?
Well, the trans militants have certainly been threatening more violence if their demands aren't met. You can see it in their signs in their shirts, such as trans rights or else, and then there are pictures of firearms and rifles. So certainly on the other side, they actually have a promise of more violence, the more that we push back.
What does America, what does the UK, what do countries that we've had Hamza Yusuf today bring abortion into debate? What are we looking at moving forward? And what would be, from your observations of chronicling these people, what would you expect us to expect, and what would you suggest we do to counteract it?
Well, what we do is we repeat the truth, which is that there is no trans genocide, and repeat various evidence about, there's not much evidence to support that transitioning of minors actually helps them with better outcomes. In fact, there's research to suggest some of the opposite. And yeah, just don't. Their demands are irrational and unreasonable, and we should call it out for what it is.
Speak the truth. Andy, no, thank you so much for joining us.